This is the beginning of Disc 1 in the deposition of Cassandra Castillo. The time is 10:59 a.m. and we are now on the record. I'm sorry. I was thinking of we are now on the record and the time is 10:59 a.m. This is the beginning of the deposition of Cassandra Castillo. Will counsel please introduce themselves and whom they represent, after which the court reporter will swear in the witness.
Jeb Butler and Mike Raffey on behalf of the plaintiff Antonio Payne.
Bill Casey for defendant.
May you please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jeb Butler and I represent Antonio Payne. Please state your name for the jury.
Cassandra Castillo.
Ms. Castillo, did you at one time work at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
When was that?
The end of July to October
Would that be in
2014.
2014? Did you work with Armand Sultani when you worked at Sierra Townhomes?
I did.
What was your title at Sierra Townhomes?
The assistant manager.
Did you understand Mr. Sultani to be the owner of Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
When you worked at Sierra Townhomes, how often, say on a per week basis, would you see Armand Sultani?
4 of the 5 days.
In a given work week?
Yes.
Did Mr. Sultani have an office at Sierra Townhomes?
He did.
To the extent that you know, what did he do in that office?
He paid the remaining of the properties, the other sister properties, and he also paid all of the bills. He would complete payroll and then also pay the bills that came in.
Were the payroll and the bills done, to the extent you know, just for Sierra Townhomes or for many properties that Mr. Sultani had an ownership interest in?
For all of the properties.
Let me object as to form, first of all, lacking in foundation. That's and form of the question.
Ms. Castillo, was there a lot of crime at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
Objection is lacking foundation.
Was Sierra Townhomes a safe place for residents and their guests?
No.
By the time the jury watches this videotape, they will have already heard about some crime against residents and their guests, but I'd like to ask you about crime involving employees of Sierra Townhomes. Did Sierra Townhomes at one time have a maintenance guy named Damien?
Yes.
What was Damien's title and what did y'all call him?
He was a punch tech for Sierra Townhomes, and basically what he would do is complete apartments, punch them, and get them ready for move-ins.
Did y'all call him D or Damien, or what did
D.
you call him? Was D ever the victim of crime at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
He actually didn't show up to work one day, and when I got home, I called him and I kind of asked to see if he was okay. He then informed me he was held at gunpoint at Sierra Townhomes, and that's why he left and he didn't return back to work.
Excuse me 1 second. Let me object to the form of the question, number 1. Number 2, lacking in foundation. Number 3, clearly calling for hearsay.
At the time that D told you that, was D still on the payroll for Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
What did D do after he got held at gunpoint?
He left the property.
Did he keep working for Armand Sultani or not?
Yes.
Tell me what happened, how he kept working for Armand Sultani.
Armand actually placed him at another property.
Another property that Armand controlled?
Yes.
Objection as to form. Leading and lacking foundation.
Was the other property that D went to the extent that you know, another property that Armand Sultani controlled?
Yes.
How do you know that?
I called D to kind of make sure he was okay, and he told me Armand placed him at another property.
Did Armand Sultani know that D had been held up at gunpoint on the property of Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
How do you know that?
I called him and told him myself.
You told Armand Sultani?
Yes.
Did you know a courtesy officer at Sierra Townhomes by the name of Lassiter?
Yes.
Or were you aware that Lassiter was eventually fired by Armand Sultani?
Yes.
Well, before Armand Sultani fired Lassiter, was Lassiter ever a victim of crime at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
What happened?
He was held at gunpoint and he was jumped.
Did Armand Sultani know that Lassiter, the courtesy officer, had been jumped and held at gunpoint?
Yes.
Excuse me, one objection as to form, lacking foundation.
All right. Let me ask the question again. You can keep your objection because I'm not entirely sure what my question was. Did Armand Sultani know that the courtesy officer, Lassiter, had been held at gunpoint and jumped?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Angry residents would come into the leasing office and inform him of what happened or what occurred during the weekend or during, after business hours when the leasing office was closed.
Excuse me, objection, hearsay.
How do you know that residents told Sultani about Lassiter being held at gunpoint and jumped?
I was in the leasing office. We would stand in the lobby or stand in the actual office, and residents would come in there and let both of us know that, that's what happened.
So did you overhear the conversation where residents told Armand Sultani that Lassiter had been held at gunpoint and jumped?
Yes.
Same objection, calls for hearsay.
Our response, to the extent it's required, will be that it shows notice is offered not for the truth of the matter asserted. We've talked a little bit about Lassiter. Was Lassiter what Sierra Townhomes called a, quote, courtesy officer, end quote?
Yes.
There's been some dispute in this case about the job of a, quote, courtesy officer, end quote, versus what a security guard would do. So let me ask you this. Was Lassiter mostly focused on security or mostly focused on other things?
Other things.
Like what?
Handing out letters, checking for the lighting at the property.
Did Lassiter, who was what Sierra Townhomes called a courtesy officer, confront people when people were shooting off guns or committing crimes at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
Objection, foundation.
Let me run it back, and Mr. Casey, you keep your objection.
Thank you.
Did Lassiter, who was what Sierra Townhomes called a, quote, courtesy officer, end quote, confront people when they were shooting off guns or committing crimes at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
How do you know that?
He would write on the courtesy officer logs, and we would highlight it, and that's it. He also came into the leasing office and told us that he is not going to confront him because he did live on site, and we had the young thugs hanging there.
Did, just to make sure our pronouns are clear when we play this, are you saying that Lassiter came into the security office and said he would not confront folks?
Yes.
Was Armand Sultani aware that Lassiter would not confront folks?
Yes.
How do you know that?
He would come in there and we would have courtesy officer meetings, and it would be Mr. Lassiter, myself, and Armand, and we would discuss any of the crime that kind of happened at Sierra Townhome. He then told us he's not going to confront anyone. He would write it on the logs, and then we would give it to Armand.
Let me ask you another question. Did you know that people shot guns at Sierra Townhomes?
When I was there, I didn't have any experience of them shooting guns while I was there, but residents would inform us that after business hours, a lot of different criminal activity would take place.
And when you say us in that preceding sentence, do you mean the folks who worked at Sierra Townhomes?
The employees, yes.
Excuse me, let me again interpose an objection to the hearsay testimony.
Our response will be the same. Now, I apologize if this sounds repetitive, Ms. Castillo, but did residents at Sierra Townhomes ever complain to people who worked at Sierra Townhomes about the amount of crime on the property?
Yes.
Did they complain to Armand Sultani?
Yes.
Again, objection based on a lack of foundation and hearsay.
Did you hear them complain to Armand Sultani?
Yes.
Did they complain to you?
Yes.
Did you let Armand Sultani know there was crime going on at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
Did residents sometimes complain in writing about the crime at Sierra Townhomes?
One that I know of.
I will show you what I've marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 18. And I'll represent to you that this document, which has already been talked about at depositions, is an email chain that came about as a part of a Craigslist ad for Sierra Townhomes. Turn with me, if you will, to the second page of Plaintiff's Exhibit 18. and you'll see some highlighted text. I'm going to read that, and then the first question I ask you will be whether I read it correctly. There are gang members living here shooting guns and causing problems. Somebody got murdered by the mailbox and the guys who did it still walking around. There is a full-blown prostitution apartment going on in the A building. Did I read that right?
Yes.
Were the things that I just read true?
Yes.
Now you can see at the sort of bottom of page 2, this came from a Craigslist ad. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is Craigslist, in case some people in the jury don't know, like an online website where people list apartments, kind of like the classified ads in the newspapers?
Yes.
And flip with me, if you will, to the first page. And at the top there, you can see highlighted what the name of that Craigslist ad was. Would you read that to us?
Come to where everyone wants to live.
And this is an email. Under that it says it's from Sierra Townhomes, Sierra.townhomes@yahoo.com. Is that right?
Correct.
I wanted to ask you about some security measures at Sierra Townhomes. First, the general question. When you were there, what was security like at Sierra Townhomes?
We didn't have security.
Did residents at Sierra Townhomes ever talk about the need for more security to the extent that you know?
Yes.
Did residents or people who lived at Sierra Townhomes ever ask Armand Soltani about getting more security?
Yes.
Do you know that because you overheard it?
I was standing in the room.
How many entrances were there where cars could drive into Sierra Townhomes?
2.
How many gates were there?
1.
Did people who worked at Sierra Townhomes ever ask Armand Soltani for an additional gate?
Yes.
Did he ever add an additional gate?
No.
I want to ask you about cameras. Were there any working security cameras at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
Did residents or people who worked at Sierra Townhomes ever talk about the need for working security cameras?
Yes.
Did people who worked at Sierra Townhomes ask Armand Soltani for working cameras?
We wouldn't, because he didn't repair the gate. He didn't repair any of the smaller issues in the apartment, so we knew he wasn't going to make that large expense to purchase cameras.
Objection, responsiveness.
Is the answer you just gave, does that describe why? Strike that. Were there often lights at Sierra Townhomes that didn't work?
Yes.
Did residents or people who worked at Sierra Townhomes ever talk about the need for lights that actually worked?
Yes.
Did residents or people who lived at, did residents or people who worked at Sierra Townhomes ever ask Armand Soltani about improving the lighting?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Like I said, residents would come in and I would be standing there when they would be angry and requesting the lights to be working. We would speak with Ms. Tanya Richardson in regards to the lights. If they can add more lights, replace the light bulbs, just kind of make it a little bit brighter for everyone.
Did Armand Soltani ever make it where the lights worked better at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
Was there a fence around Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
Was there a gap in that fence?
Yes.
Where was the gap?
On the back of the property connecting to the townhomes right behind Sierra Townhomes.
To the extent that you know from your time at Sierra Townhomes, were those townhomes on the other side of the gap in the fence a dangerous area?
They were.
Did Armand Soltani ever fix the gap in that fence?
No.
Did he do anything about it?
He asked our maintenance guys to cover it up with mulch and branches to make a hill high enough to where the residents or the people that lived over at the townhomes couldn't get through or had to jump high enough to get through the gates.
Did Armand Soltani or anyone at Sierra Townhomes ever actually repair the fence?
No.
Did you ever ask Armand Soltani about security measures?
Yes.
I think we've talked about how you were present when other people asked Soltani about security measures. Is that right?
Correct.
How would Armand Soltani react when you or someone else asked him about security measures?
He would laugh. He would give us a direct answer. He would kind of just brush us off.
I want to ask you some questions about Armand Soltani credibility or truthfulness, but because of the way the rules are written, I don't want you to give me examples just yet. If the defense lawyer wants specific examples, he has the right to ask for them when he asks you questions. So right now, let me just ask you this. In your opinion, is Armand Soltani an honest, truthful, and credible person?
No.
Around Sierra Townhomes, did Armand Soltani have a reputation for being honest, truthful, and credible?
No.
What was Armand Soltani's reputation with regard to whether he was honest, truthful, and credible?
The opposite of being honest. He was not honest at all.
In your opinion, was Armand Soltani honest, truthful, and credible, or not?
He was not.
Did Sierra Townhomes have written records of the crimes and security problems that occurred on the property?
Yes.
What were those records?
It's courtesy officer logs that the courtesy officer would turn in daily.
And what happened to those courtesy officer logs? Did folks keep them or what?
Yes. There were 2 binders full of logs when I was employed with him.
Are you talking about binders like 3-ring binders kind of things?
Yes, 3-ring binders.
And how many were there?
2 of them.
Is that where all the courtesy officer logs went?
Yes.
Was there a courtesy officer log filled out for every single day?
Yes.
Did those courtesy officer logs show the crimes that occurred on the property, the confrontations on the property, and other security problems for each day?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to show you now a stack of paper, and I've marked it as Plaintiff's Exhibit 19. And I'm going to represent to you that this paper is all the courtesy officer logs that Sierra Townhomes and Armand Soltani have provided in this case up through your last day at Sierra Townhomes. Now, pick that paper up and sort of show it to the camera so that they can see how thick it is. All right, now, let's describe, were the binders that you recall and that you were just talking about that contained all the courtesy officer logs and the records of crimes and stuff bigger or smaller than the paper in Plaintiff's Exhibit number 19?
A lot bigger.
A lot bigger.
Yes.
All right. Let's go off video for a second. Huh?
The time is 11:17 a.m. and we are now off the record.
Yeah.
The time is 11:18 a.m. and we are now back on the record.
In fact, Ms. Castillo, if you look at Plaintiff's Exhibit 19, on the left side of the page, do you see 3 little marks?
The ring binder, these marks?
Yeah, describe what those are.
They're binder marks.
Does it appear to be the kind of mark that would be made if you photocopied something that used to be in a binder?
Yes.
Now I'm going to hand you, you described for us 2 binders that contained all these records of crimes and confrontations, right?
Correct.
I'm going to hand you 2 reams of paper, and by ream I just mean this pack of 500 sheets that you buy when you need something for your copier. Mm-hmm. And I'll ask you to go into them and pull out enough pages to where it'll be as thick as the binders that you saw. So if you could do that for us now, please.
So the first one was about this big.
I'm sorry, can you please speak up?
Oh, I'm sorry. The first binder was about this big, and then when I left, the second one was probably like that much of them.
All right, Ms. Castillo, our kind videographer, Ms. Deirdre, has now got the camera focused. So point to these stacks, if you will, and tell us what we're looking at here.
This stack is the stack that you presented to me that Armand handed over to you guys. When I was employed with Armand Sultani, the first binder was about this thick, and the second one upon me leaving was about this thick.
So the first binder you said is represented by the stack in the middle of the table?
Correct.
And then the stack on your right and the jury's left is the second binder that was being built when you left?
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to now take a picture of that with my iPhone here and smile for the camera. Okay, we'll make that an exhibit a little bit later. All right, thank you. I'll clean up your space some. Wait a minute. Have I separated them right?
Yes.
All right. Did you ever, well, strike that. Ms. Castillo, do you know where those binders that contain the records of crimes and confrontations are now?
No.
Have you ever heard anyone who worked for Sierra Townhomes talk about destroying those binders?
No.
You have any idea what happened to them?
No.
Do you know whether Armand Sultani ever saw the records of crimes and confrontations and security problems that were contained in those binders?
Yes.
How you know?
I would scan and email them to him daily.
Is that every day you'd send the courtesy officer log?
Yes.
Would you do anything to the courtesy officer log before you emailed a copy?
We would highlight anything that occurred or any altercation that Mr. Lassiter had with any type of resident, also any lighting that was out.
Would you email those highlighted copies to Mr. Sultani?
Yes.
Did you send them to Mr. Sultani's personal account, namra97@aol.com, which is NAMRA97@AOL.com?
Yes.
Did Mr. Sultani ever say, whoa, this is too much crime, we better do something about this?
No.
Did he ever acknowledge to you that there was a lot of crime going on at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
I want to ask you some questions about people who were thinking about moving into Sierra Townhomes. Did you ever talk with folks who were considering moving into Sierra Townhomes and sort of show them around the property?
Yes.
When you did that, did you ever talk with them about safety and crime on the property?
Yes.
What would you tell those folks?
To not move at Sierra Townhomes. It was not a safe community to bring a family into.
Did you ever hear Armand Sultani issue a similar warning to anybody about crime and security at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
While you were at Sierra Townhomes, did you ever know Armand Sultani or anyone else who worked for Sierra Townhomes other than you to warn residents about the crime going on the property?
No.
Did Armand Sultani ever talk to people who were thinking about moving into Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
Well, what did Armand Sultani tell those people about the crime going on at Sierra Townhomes?
He would tell them that it's a safe community, it's a gated community, and we have a courtesy officer that lives on site.
How do you know that's what Armand Sultani would say?
One particular applicant, I was sitting at the desk and he kind of stood over me and spoke to her.
Meaning Armand Sultani stood over you and told that to the person who was thinking about moving in?
Yes, correct.
When Armand Sultani told people that Sierra Townhomes was safe, did he know about the crime going on at Sierra Townhomes?
Objection
Yes.
is to form foundation.
Let me ask again, and Mr. Casey, you keep your standing objection. You'll have a standing objection to this question. When Armand let me start that one more time. When Armand Sultani told people that Sierra Townhomes was safe, did he know about the crime going on at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
Well, how do you know that Armand Soltani knew about the crime going on at Sierra Townhomes?
He would be there when the angry residents would come in and inform us of what happened or what occurred during the weekend or after the leasing office was closed. He would also receive the courtesy officer logs daily.
That's in the emails you talked about.
Correct.
Let's go off video for a second. And we'll stay on Steno.
The time is 11:25 a.m. and we are now off the record.
Well, that was foolish. Let's go back.
I've never done that.
The time is 11:25 a.m. and we are now back on the record.
Ms. Castillo, did Sierra Townhomes have Section 8 residents living on the property?
We did.
And when you say Section 8, are you referring to people who received vouchers or monetary assistance from the government pursuant to a Section 8 program to live on the property?
Yes.
If you know from your time as an assistant manager at Sierra Townhomes, did that money from Section 8 from the government come to Sierra Townhomes?
It was direct deposited, yes.
Direct deposited to Sierra Townhomes?
Mm-hmm.
Did Sierra Townhomes also have some residents who were not receiving Section 8 money?
Yes.
Or strike that. Did Sierra Townhomes also have residents as to which Sierra Townhomes was not receiving money from the Section 8 program?
Yes.
To the extent you know from your time as an assistant manager at Sierra Townhomes, did Sierra Townhomes and Armand Soltani make more money from the Section 8 residents or from the non-Section 8 residents?
From the Section 8 residents.
Did you ever hear Armand Soltani say, when asked about security, quote, "as long as Section 8 keeps paying, it doesn't matter,"
Yes.
end quote?
Yes.
Did you hear him say that just once or multiple times?
Multiple times.
Thank you. I have no further questions. I do want to put in, this is Plaintiff's Exhibit 20. It's a placeholder. What I'll do is email around that picture I just took, and then we can sub it in for Plaintiff's 20.
Very good.
All right.
What time's our last depot start?
1.
1? Okay.
We're also going to preserve the demonstrative evidence here.
Yeah, all right. So these two stacks of paper will preserve some way or another. I
You
don't
wanna mark
frankly.
'em, or-
It's fine. We're not going. Yeah, I guess we better mark them, huh?
Yeah, as long as we,
Okay.
that's,
Okay.
that's how y'all want to do
Sure.
it, that's perfect.
All right. Feel kind of silly marking blank pages. There we go.
The
Okay.
The larger stack is marked 21. I'll let you talk.
It's okay. I'm gonna get hoarse if I keep this up.
And the smaller stack is marked 22.
Mr. Rafi, are you referring to the two stacks that we used to represent the binders of courtesy officer logs?
I am, and this is my life, being cross-examined all the time.
All right, we ready? Yes, I do.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Are we on record? Oh, okay. Good morning, or afternoon, whichever it may be.
Almost afternoon, probably.
My name's Bill Casey, and I represent the folks that have been sued in this case. I've got a few questions for you.
Sure.
The last time you worked at the property was what month and what year?
October 2014.
And the last time you would have seen the courtesy officer's activity log would be
In October
2014.
2014, correct.
Now, Mr. Butler's referred to plaintiff's exhibit, was that 19? And said that it documented crimes, confrontations, and other activity.
Correct.
Basically, thumb through that if you would, just take a look at some parts of it. I think you'll agree with me that the courtesy officer's activity log also documents when rounds were made and what observations were made and that sort of thing, right?
Correct.
What you're looking at is not just a stack of documents that represent crimes, confrontations, and things of that sort, does it?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Do you know anything at all about this incident that we're here about today?
I don't. I know a gentleman was shot.
Okay. You don't know who the gentleman was.
No,
You don't know the circumstances under which the shooting occurred.
no,
You don't know whether it was daylight or nighttime.
I don't.
You don't know whether he knew the guy that shot him or not.
I do not.
Where do you work now?
I work at Landmark at Banyan Bay Apartment Homes.
And where's that located?
It's located off of Pleasantdale Road in Doraville.
And is that a gated community?
It is a gated community.
And do you have video surveillance cameras?
Not yet.
Okay. Is there a fence around the property?
There is.
Is there a hole in the fence?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay. Have you had people enter the property without permission since you've been working there?
Yes,
Okay. And so the gates do not keep people out, do they?
they do not.
Right. And the fence, you say, has no holes in it, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Back to this incident here, do you know whether the person that is involved in this shooting that actually pulled the trigger, do you know whether he was a guest or a tenant of the property?
I do not.
Do you know someone named Shawnita Jeffries?
I do not.
Okay. Now, if you were to, at either your current job or any other job involving property management, if you noticed significant increase in foot traffic at a particular apartment when a specific individual was there, would that give you cause for concern?
Objection
Yes.
calls for speculation.
You may answer.
Yes,
Okay. And the reason that would give you cause for concern would be because you might think that there's something illegal going on there, correct?
Same
Correct.
objection.
Now, you said Mr. Lassiter said he was not going to intervene, right?
correct.
But Mr. Lassiter had a cell phone, didn't he?
He did.
And Mr. Lassiter could call the police, couldn't
He could.
he? And Mr. Lassiter did call the police, didn't
Depending on which altercation.
he? Okay. But it's not as if Mr. Lassiter said, I'm not going to do anything about whatever I see. What he said was, I don't want to get personally involved. I'll call the police if I need to.
His words to me and to Armand were he wasn't going to confront anyone.
Personally.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the person involved in, anyone involved in any of the shootings that you, or crimes that you talked about, do you know how they gained access to the property?
No,
You don't know whether they walked on the property or drove through the front gate, do you?
I do not.
You don't know whether they crawled through a hole in the fence or whether they came in with a resident, do you?
I do not.
In the email that you looked at part of earlier, one of the exhibits you referred to earlier today, you had responded to an email to Mr. and Mrs. Tuggle, correct?
I did not.
You did not.
No,
And who utilized your email address for that purpose?
I don't know.
Okay. You didn't write this email.
I did not.
All right. In that email, however, it does say that unfortunately crime has no address and we are doing all we can to make sure our residents are safe. What do you know, what does that mean to you, the phrase, crime has no address?
Objection relevant is this witness has no knowledge about that, didn't write it. And then I think there's a foundation objection there too.
Okay. You ever heard the phrase, unfortunately crime has no address?
I have.
And you would agree that that particular phrase means to you that crime can happen everywhere, right?
Correct.
It can happen anywhere, correct?
Correct.
How long have you been in property management in total?
5 years.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. That's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Give me a couple seconds to get organized here. Yeah, I guess we may as well. Yep. All right. if you were off video or not. Were you still rolling? How much tape we got left?
Yeah, 50 minutes, 50.
That'll be plenty. All right. Ms. Castillo, you're looking here at Plaintiff's Exhibit 19, which is the courtesy officer activity logs that we talked about. Is that right?
That's correct.
If we look, say, at the first page here, what's the date on the bottom right?
6/2/2013.
And if we go just to the next page, what's the date of that?
June the 14th, 2013.
Or there's some missing days between June 2 and June 14?
Yes.
In your recollection, did the courtesy officer activity logs come in for every single day?
They did.
I wanted to ask you briefly about your last day at Sierra Townhomes. It was my recollection that it was August 29 of 2014 was your last day. Could that be right?
That
Objection,
could
leading.
possibly be right.
Okay,
July,
this is-
August, no, October would have been my last day.
So you think October rather than August?
Correct.
Okay. Would you print off some more stuff? All right, we're going to have to add to, hold on, Mike, let me give you, well, all right, we're going to have to redo some stuff then.
Okay.
Should we go off the record?
Yeah, we probably should. We'll do it right here.
The time is 11:37 a.m. and we are now off the record. The time is 11:38 a.m. and we are now back on the record.
Ms. Castillo, the defense lawyer asked you some questions about Lassiter. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
Talking about whether Lassiter had a cell phone so he could call 911. You remember
Yes.
that? At the time that Lassiter was there, was he Sierra Townhomes' only courtesy officer?
Yes.
Did they have a security guard or anybody other than Lassiter?
No.
Was this the same Lassiter who said he was unwilling to confront people committing crimes at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
Did, if you call 911, do the police arrive instantly
No.
or does it take a minute?
It takes a while.
You were asked some questions about the new apartment complex where you work now. Do you remember those questions?
Correct. Yes.
Is there as much crime going on there as there was at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
Is it close?
No.
Are residents reasonably safe at the new apartment complex?
Objection
Yes.
as to form, lacking foundation.
All right. Let me ask that again. You'll have that same standing objection to that question and the one following it, because I know you want to object to the same thing. Strike that. Are residents and their guests at the apartment complex where you work now reasonably safe?
Yes.
Was that true at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
You were asked some about this Craigslist ad and email exchange. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
I'm going to show you again plaintiff's exhibit number 18. Is that what we were talking about?
Yes.
I'm going to show you now another email involving or from Sierra Townhomes, and I've marked it as plaintiff's exhibit 23. I only have one copy of this, so I'm going to let Mr. Casey take a look at it, and then I'll ask you the question about it. Okay. Now, with respect to Plaintiff's Exhibit 18, the Craigslist ad and email exchange, it's got your name at the bottom of page 1, doesn't it?
Correct.
But did you write the email shown on page 1?
I did not.
How did your name come to be at the bottom of it, if you know?
I had a signature set up while I was an employee there with them, and if they didn't change it after I left, every email that went out after my last day would have had that exact same signature.
Well, let me show you Plaintiff's Exhibit 23. Is that an email exchange between Armand Soltani and Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
And what is the date on that email exchange in Plaintiff's Exhibit 23?
December 29, 2014.
Were you still working at Sierra Townhomes at that time?
No.
But is that still your name at the bottom of page 1 on Plaintiff's Exhibit 23?
Yes.
So, but did you write the email in
I-
Plaintiff's Exhibit 23?
I did not.
Well, let's look back at Plaintiff Exhibit 18, the Craigslist ad and email exchange that we were talking about. This is the one, another one that you did not write. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, let's look at what it says. It says in here, let's see, in the paragraph there at the bottom, beginning with the word "we," which is under my thumb, I'm going to read and ask you to read with me. It says, quote, "We are doing all we can to make sure our residents are safe." Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Was that true?
No.
Was Sierra Townhomes doing all it could to keep its residents safe?
No.
Did Sierra Townhomes, to your knowledge, ever put in a second gate?
No.
Did Sierra Townhomes, to your knowledge, ever hire a real security guard? That is, one focused on security, not just handing out letters and stuff like a courtesy officer.
No.
Did Sierra Townhomes, to your knowledge, ever put in real security cameras?
No.
Did Armand Soltani or Sierra Townhomes, to your knowledge, ever fix the gap in that fence that
No.
we talked about? Let's go off record now.
The time is 11:43 a.m. and we are now off the record.
I'll see you.
The time is 11:45 a.m. and we are now back on the record.
All right, Miss Castillo, I made a mistake earlier about your last day. I thought your last day was in August 2014, but you said it was October 2014. In order then to have the correct amount of number of pages that we received from Sierra Townhomes and Armand Soltani to represent the courtesy officer logs up until your final time at Sierra Townhomes, I had to add some pages to Plaintiff's Exhibit 19. Have I done that during our break?
Yes.
All right. In front of you now, in Plaintiff's Exhibit 19, is a full, I'm going to represent to you, is a full collection of all the courtesy officer activity logs that Sierra Townhomes and Armand Soltani produced to us through the time that you stopped working at Sierra Townhomes.
Okay.
Now, let's do that comparison again so we have a clear record. Push that to your left, if you will. And I will now show you Plaintiff's Exhibit 21 and also Plaintiff's Exhibit 22. Now, walk us through, if you will, as soon as we'll get Ms. Deirdre to focus on that. And walk us through, pointing with your hand, if you will, what those stacks represent.
On the left is the paperwork we just discussed, the reports given to you all. In the middle is the first courtesy officer log while I was an employee with Armand Soltani. And the second one, it's the second binder we were building upon me leaving. This was in the works.
So let me go back through and ask some questions just to clarify for the jury and from the jury's perspective. They'll be watching this video. On your left and the jury's right, those are the logs that were given to us, in this case, by Armand Soltani and Sierra Townhomes. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
In the middle there's Plaintiff's Exhibit number 21. Does the stack of that paper in Plaintiff's Exhibit 21 in the middle in front of you represent the size of the first binder that contained all the crimes, confrontations, and notices of security problems?
Yes.
And does the stack on your right and on the jury's left represent the size of the second binder that Sierra Townhomes had, collecting all the information about crimes, confrontations, and security problems?
Yes.
Thank you. I will now take a picture of you in those three stacks. So smile for me. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Castillo, we've been sitting here now for a while, and I thank you for your time. Are you being paid to be here today?
No.
Why are you here?
To seek justice for the gentleman that was shot. I don't personally know him, but I work with Armand and I know what type of person he is, and just to get some justice for the gentleman that got shot and what happened to him.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
And if justice were to dictate that the apartment complex is not responsible for this shooting, you'd be okay with that if it happened to turn out that way, wouldn't you?
Objection relevance.
Go ahead.
No, because I work for Armand Sultani, and he doesn't care for anyone except himself.
You don't like Armand Sultani.
Not that I don't like him. He's a nice person. He was nice to me while I was employed with him, but the way he did things, I didn't agree with. With me being in the business for as long as I'd been in the business, I know right from wrong, and he was doing a lot of wrong.
Okay. I'm going to object to the responsiveness of that answer. My question is, you agree you don't like Armand Sultani, correct?
I don't agree.
You don't. You like him.
He was nice to me. I don't have anything personal against him.
Do you like him?
Asked and answered, I object.
No.
I will submit that it has not been answered. Do you like him or not, ma'am?
Asked and answered for the 4th time.
Go ahead.
No, I guess.
Okay. Back to where you're now working and what you're doing there. I think you told us there is a complete fence around the property, right?
Correct.
And there is a gate that works, correct?
Correct.
And is there a security guard?
We have a security company that comes out and
Okay.
secures
And they come out and do patrols at various times?
various times.
And they do them at different times of the day. They don't have a set schedule, do they?
Correct.
And the reason they do that is because they don't want the goal there is so that they won't be patterned as to when they'll be there and when they won't be there, correct?
Correct.
Objection, foundation, calls for speculation.
Are you familiar with why the security guards at the property where you now work come at varying schedules?
I am.
Okay. And the reason they come at varying schedules is so that their time of coming to the property and leaving the property can't be patterned or predicted, correct?
Same objections.
Correct.
Okay. And do you have courtesy officers at that location?
Yes.
How many, is the courtesy officer, do they live on site?
They do not.
Does how many hours a day do you have the security company there with security guards?
About 5 to 6 hours a day.
Okay. And do they have one or two that come there and
We
work?
have a total of 5
5.
at different times.
Right. But at any given shift, how many guards would you expect to be there?
1 to 2.
All right. And they patrol the office, the property rather routinely.
Correct.
And have you had crime at that property?
Not since we've taken over,
Okay.
no.
Not one single crime?
No.
Okay. And do you have the same security company there now that was on the property before you took it over?
No.
Okay. Excuse me. All right. And you gave us the address of that property. What is it?
It's located off of Pleasantdale Road in Doraville.
Uh-huh.
Do you need the actual address?
Yes, ma'am. What's the street?
3497 Meadow Glen Village Lane.
Okay. And you've been there how long?
I've been there since July 24th.
All right. All right, ma'am. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I'll have just a few more questions. Ms. Castillo, you said at the property where you now worked, did you say there was a security company that worked there?
Yes.
Was there a similar security company at Sierra Townhomes?
No.
How many security personnel did you say there were that came at different times to the property where you now work?
1 to 2.
And have any of them ever been jumped and held at gunpoint on the property?
No.
Is that what happened to Laster at Sierra Townhomes?
Yes.
At the new property where you now worked, where you had the security company and all the other things we've talked about, has there been crime at anywhere near the levels that there was at Sierra Townhomes when you were there?
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
How would you describe the neighborhood where you now work versus the neighborhood where Sierra Townhomes is located?
The neighborhood where I now work, it's, to me, safe. I moved on site. It's safe. I have a 2-year-old daughter. At Sierra Townhomes, the crime was bad. It was the end of Godby Road. And then with Armand not taking the correct security measures to ensure everyone was safe, it's a lot safer where I'm currently working.
Okay, my question though, ma'am, is in general, not just the apartment complex itself or
The
the
area.
property itself, But the area in general, where you live now is a far better area, correct?
Yes.
Than Godby Road down in College Park, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Did Armand Soltani know about the area where Sierra Townhomes was located?
Yes.
Did he do the things necessary to keep his residents and their guests safe?
Objection is to
No.
form, foundation, call for legal exclusion.
All right.
Conclusion, excuse me.
You keep those objections that are preserved. At your time at Sierra Townhomes, did Armand Soltani do the things necessary to keep residents and their guests safe?
No.
Nothing further.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.
Thank you.
This is the end of Disc 1 in the deposition of Cassandra Castillo. The time is 11:54 a.m. and we are now off the record.